We're talking today about the air conditioner and specifically about how long can we run the air conditioner off propane. Home-built camper Dave asks, do you have any estimate as to the runtime of the AC with the generator running off propane? The tank seems to be reasonably sized, but how many hours do you find you get? Now, Dave, this is a really great question. And funny enough, I researched on YouTube and online, and I could not find any information that answers this question. It's surprising to me, and it's such a great question. So I am here today, Ultra Mobility, Neil, your host, to actually put to rest and answer the question, how long can you actually run that thing off propane? Is it viable? Is it feasible for you to go boondocking for long periods of time or leaving your pet in the van for long periods of time with the AC running? Well, as I normally do when I have a difficult question like this, I turn to my trusty go-to person, who is Grant Waters over at Pleasureway. Grant is such a helpful resource, and if you're interested in buying a Pleasureway, when you write to Pleasureway, he's usually the guy that'll write back to you. And if you own a Pleasureway, he'll certainly write back to you and try to answer your question. So I wrote to Grant and I asked him this question, and Grant was nice enough to actually send me an LP gas consumption spec sheet, and I'm going to put that up right now. And this is just a wealth of information. It's incredible. It tells you how much 1 US gallon of liquid propane, how much energy is contained in it. In this case, it's 91,500 BTUs per hour. And then you can see, as you look through this document, you can see, look at that, every appliance is listed, and every type of appliance, even down to the cooktop from the small burner to the large burner, and you can see how many US gallons per hour that appliance consumes. So if we look down, for instance, at the generator, you can see that the generator we have in the Ascent is the Onan 2.5 kilowatt generator. And then under BTUs, you can see if there's no load and it's just idling, it's pretty thirsty. It's consuming 0.2 gallons per hour. At a half load, it's consuming 0.34 gallons per hour, so a third of a gallon. And if it's fully loaded, it's gobbling down over half a gallon an hour. So that's quite a bit. Now, if you want to know the LP tank size for any of the Pleasureway products, you can see down below, my Ascent has a rather modest 8.16 US gallon size propane tank. The Lexor has quite a bit smaller, 4.7 gallon tank. Although the generator on the Lexor is a little bit larger, it's 2.8 kilowatt generator, so slightly larger, but you can see its consumptions are a little bit smaller. So great information on this spec sheet. The point is, though, if we look at the generator, and I asked Grant, well, with regards to the air conditioner, what should we think about? He said, well, it depends, of course, on how hot it is inside the van. And that will determine how often the air conditioner needs to run. But he said, and I tend to agree with this, is if you're running the air conditioner, it's probably going to be running it between half load and full load, but you can probably just calculate around half load. So if we look at half load for us, if it's pulling the generator at half load, then we're consuming around a third of a gallon per hour. And so what that means to us, at least on the Ascent, what that means to us is in 3 hours of running the air conditioner, we've consumed 1 gallon. We've consumed 1/8 of our total propane. So in a 24-hour period, we will have consumed our entire store of propane, 8 gallons. If we just run it at half load for 24 hours, we're going to completely go through all of our propane. So that's pretty thirsty. Now, you probably don't need to run your air conditioner for 24 hours straight, unless it's just incredibly hot. Maybe at night you can open some windows and the vents and fling open your doors with the screens open and cool down. But even so, consuming in 3 hours time, consuming 1 gallon. Let's say you run the air conditioner for the 3 hottest hours during a day, then it means if you're not using anything else, propane for anything else in the van, that in 8 days you're going to completely run dry out of propane. So that tells you something now about using the generator. Think about your use case. For some of you, that's fine. That's not going to be a problem. For some of you, it will very much be a problem. For instance, I had one viewer say that she's looking at a Pleasureway and an Ascent because she's a traveling nurse and then she has a pet, and while she's working in the hospital and she's in hotter, warmer climates, her pet's going to be in the van because that's going to be her home. That's where she's going to be living while she's traveling. And she needs to be running the air conditioner. Well, the propane's not going to be lasting that long for her. She would need to find some local place, like a U-Haul center, where she can refill her propane in order to keep the air conditioner running using automatic generator start, which is the new technology that Pleasureway has announced for this model year, 2018, across all of their vans, which will automatically start the generator and run the air conditioner when conditions demand, and you don't have to be there. But for other people who are not perhaps living out of their van and leaving their pets in it all day, then this will work fine. This is an example of where Volt Start will work better for you if your use case is you need to run the air conditioner for longer periods of time unattended. Because Volt Start will use the underhood generator and it will consume gasoline or diesel from your main tank. And your main tank's just so much larger. In the case of this, it's 20-some gallons, and it's just going to last a long time. And it's just more convenient to just pull up to a filling station and refill your tank with gas or diesel than it is to go find a propane station. So it's just a matter of convenience. So I hope that answers your question about how much propane is consumed by the air conditioner, home-built Camper Dave. It's not good news, but it's good to have. So I'm going to put a link to the full document in the description below, and you all can download it and take a look at it and print it out and have it with you. But I found it very useful, and I want to thank Grant Waters over at Pleasureway for sharing that with us. Our next question comes from Morgan Jaffrey, and Morgan asks, how do you keep your dog cool? Do you run the generator for the AC every time you leave your pup in the van? Also, what's the lowest temperature your van can handle since it's not a four-season? Well, the first part of your question is, I don't live in my van full time. I have a home, and my dog is usually at the home. And when I'm out working in the mobile studio, I generally don't have my little dog with me. Sometimes I do, but keep in mind also, I'm in California and it's very temperate here. I can count, I thought about your question last night, and I can count on 3 fingers the times that I use the air conditioner in my van. And all 3 times were when I was traveling across the United States from Montreal to San Francisco last summer. I was traveling through the Utah desert, and I needed to run the air conditioner at night to sleep on 2 of the occasions. Now on both those occasions, I was at a campground and I had shore power, so I didn't need to run the generator. Just plugged into shore power and the air conditioner worked. The 3rd time that I needed to use the air conditioner was because I had to pull off on the side of the road in the middle of the desert. It was 108 degrees outside, and I had some paperwork that I had to do. And because of that, I started the generator and I ran the air conditioner, and I ran it for a total of maybe 30 minutes. And that's it. So in the last year that I've had the van, I've run the air conditioner with the generator once. So that's the first part of your question. The second part of your question is, what was the lowest temperature that I've ever had my Ascent in since it's not four-season? So you're right, my Ascent is not four-season. And the lowest temperature that I've had it in was in Quebec, which is very cold, and it was minus 30 degrees Celsius. It's very, very bitterly cold out. Not a problem. Why is it not a problem? Because any of us who have lived in the northern climates or where it gets snowy and you have an RV, you know that you need to winterize it come about October. So all winterization is pretty simple. You're just emptying out all the water from the lines and out of your tanks. And you can use a compressor to blow it out if you want. But if you don't want to deal with the compressor, you can just open the low point valves, which are underneath the chassis, and just drain all the water out of there, drain the water out of your hot water tank or your instant hot water heater, turn on all your faucets, including your external one, get all the water out of those, and get the water out of your toilet. Then all the water's gone. You don't have to worry about any of it freezing solid, expanding, and cracking pipes. If you want to be super safe, what you can do, and what I do, is I just go and I buy a little bit of antifreeze. You can get it at Walmart. I get the glycol mixture. I don't get the alcohol mixture. I just think the alcohol can dry out the seals and things like that. So I get the glycol mixture. It's a little bit more expensive, but who cares? You only need one little jug of it per winter. And you run that through, you can fill it up into your freshwater tank, just dump the whole jug in there. And then you turn on your water pump, it'll suck it into your water pump. So you've got the glycol gel in there, and then you turn on each one of your faucets and your external one, and you flush your toilet, and it'll suck it all up into those pipes. And now you're ready for the winter. You've got this glycol mixture in there, and glycol, don't believe what people say, glycol does freeze. It freezes. I did my own test because, you know, that's the kind of guy I am. It'll freeze. The thing that's different about antifreeze is it doesn't expand. So that's what you're looking for. Water expands. When it's in a confined space, it'll crack the pipes. Glycol doesn't. So glycol can freeze solid, and it will if it gets minus 30 or minus 50 out. It will freeze solid, so you need to be aware of that. But it won't crack your pipes. So when it warms up a little bit more, it'll turn back into liquid. The other nice thing about the glycol mixture is it's very easy to flush out at the end of the season in the spring when you just want it. So you're just going to fill your freshwater tank back up with fresh water, run it all through your lines, clear out all of the antifreeze, the glycol antifreeze, dump your tanks, and then run it through once more. And the glycol mixture tends to not have an aftertaste, residual aftertaste in the lines, where some of the alcohol-based ones do have that kind of residual aftertaste. So that's why I like glycol. So minus 30 degrees is the lowest I've had it in. I've driven it through blizzards. I've driven on the highway when it's been snowing hard and minus 30 degrees out. No problem. So as long as you don't have any liquid water inside of your van, you can still use everything else. I mean, your batteries, fine. I have a separate video about that because the lithium-ion batteries, which are under here, they don't like to be charged when they are under freezing. They can discharge fine, but they don't like to be charged. So you just need to put a little temperature monitor under there, warm up the cab, make sure the battery packs are above freezing, and then you can start charging from the chassis and from the solar panels. But other than that, you can use it during the winter just fine. I even got creative during the winter, and I just carried around a little bit of that antifreeze, that glycol antifreeze, under my sink. And whenever any of us needed to use the bathroom, you'd use the bathroom, and then when you flush, you just take some of that glycol and flush with the glycol, basically. And that's fine. And it worked fine in minus 30 degree weather. I never had any problems. So that's something you can do. The other thing you can do, if you're clever, and I tried to be clever about this, and then I got over it, but you can actually, there's a bypass on the water pump. The water pump's under here. And there's a little bypass switch, and you can switch the bypass. And that way it will not be pulling water from the freshwater tank. It'll be pulling water from another hose that you can have stuck into your antifreeze. And so when you have the water pump on, whenever you flush the toilet, it'll just suck the antifreeze from, and I keep it under the sink. I kept it under the sink. And it'll just suck from that, and it'll flush through your toilet. So almost everything you can use during the winter except for your sinks. You can't use your sinks during the winter, but that's not a big deal. Everything else is fine, and I use this just fine in the winter in Quebec. So I hope that answers your question, Morgan. Very good question. Well, that wraps it up for today's episode about air conditioners and propane. If you like the episode, I would really appreciate a thumbs up. And if you haven't yet subscribed, remember to subscribe because you'll be notified as soon as a new episode hits. Next time, we're going to be talking about OCCC and GCWR and GVWR. And if those acronyms all sound like a bunch of gobbledygook to you, you're not alone. And it's an episode you need to tune into because it's actually really important. So we'll see you again next week with a brand new episode. Take care. Bye-bye.